What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Breakdown Podcast Friday episode here, 2 days away from the Pittsburgh Steelers' regular season opener against the Atlanta Falcons. We don't know the starting quarterback. We have a lot to talk about. But first, I want to talk about Pat Freiermuth getting an extension, 4 years, 48 and a half, just about million, 12.1 per year. That'll get him ninth overall in average per year value, right over Dalton Schultz, right behind Cole Kmet. And so that is where he kind of came in. I had been told that he wanted to be inside the top 10. He wanted more than Noah Fant, which was at 10 and a half. He got more than that, got 1.6 more than that, actually. So a pretty solid deal here for Pat Freiermuth. You know, have seen a lot of debate online. Is he worth it? Um, and let me play kind of where this deal is coming from. There's three things. One, the Arthur Smith offense is going to heavily feature a tight end, and every team that he has been an offensive coordinator of has heavily featured a tight end. You can look with the Falcons; it's been Kyle Pitts and Jonnu Smith. You can go with the Titans as well. Jonnu Smith is there, and then Delaney Walker. And so, you have tight ends at the crux, at the key portions of this offense. You have standout tight ends that are really good receivers. Two, tight ends typically break out late. We've seen this across the NFL, where it takes tight ends sometimes. Now, you have some outliers there, but most guys don't break out at tight end until year four, year five, et cetera, et cetera. We've seen, David Njoku with Cleveland. We've seen Mark Andrews not break out until later. Isaiah Likely with the Ravens just this year three, looks like he's going to start to break out, but it sometimes takes year three, four, five. Evan Ingram is a huge example with the Jaguars. He's great now. Fant, who I just mentioned, didn't break out until after he was out of Denver, really. Dalton Schultz with the Texans, right where he's at. These guys haven't really broken out until their fourth or fifth years. That is something that is pretty common at this position. So this is a late bloomer position. And then three, there aren't that many good tight ends. No matter what you consider Pat Freiermuth, he's an above average tight end. We'll get into why I think that. But he's an above average tight end. And you pay in most of these extensions, you pay some bit of potential, right? You pay something of what you think will be realized in that extension. So they're paying that they think Pat Freiermuth will become something of, a near top 10, top 12-ish tight end. And he'll have to take a step with his blocking, which is definitely, I think, the biggest critique of his game. But he's a pretty savvy route runner. He's pretty good after the catch. I think he's a lot better after the catch, actually, than people give him credit for. Very dependable, has strong hands, tough player. He's a guy that can be a blanket for you in this offense, and he's going to be featured so heavily. I don't hate the deal. I acknowledge that he's going to have to play up. I think to fully meet the expectations for it. But I also look at Pat Freiermuth and say this guy is a good player. There's not that many good tight ends in the league. He brings things that a lot of other tight ends don't bring to the table. With his yak skills, I think he's much better from the slot than people realize. You go back to 2022, which is where this deal is really coming in on. They're going to attribute a lot of what happened last year to the hamstring injury really hindering him and, knocking him out and then kind of hurting his athleticism throughout the season. So they will definitely hinge it. And then if you want to make the argument that, health is going to be part of this. He's only missed 7 games in 3 years, but he's had a history of concussions. He's been banged up, et cetera, et cetera. Fair play to you. But there is an unrealized upside in most of these extensions, especially for the tight end position. Because as I mentioned, this is a historically late blooming position in the league, and we have seen teams before take risks with players like the Browns did with David Njoku. They took a risk with him, signing him to that deal, and now it looks like a steal, obviously, for Cleveland. So you take risks sometimes with some of these tight end deals, but you have to bet on potential there. And so I don't hate the deal. I think it's nice to have somebody in that core locked up. It didn't seem like they wanted to pay Najee Harris. Next year's obviously going to be Pickens' year, as long as he, can exceed expectations. But we'll kind of see where that goes. So I don't have a problem with this extension for Pat Freiermuth. They did have to, I think, at some point start looking at some of these young guys and saying, "Are these guys part of our future?" And they clearly think Pat Freiermuth is, with the offense, with the position, with the context of the position around the NFL, and with what he's shown specifically in year 1 and 2. I am not against it either. So I think he can be a lot better this year. Featured split out specifically in this offense. I think this could be a guy that gets 60 plus catches, definitely gets over that 700-yard threshold, could have 5+ touchdowns. I think he could have a really good year for the Steelers this year. He's going to be the no-2 target, the clear no-2 target in the passing game. It's going to be Pickens on him. So we'll see kind of where he goes from there. All right, let's get to quarterback. All right. So Justin Fields and Russell Wilson both talked today. You thought you were going to get some massive gotcha answer, and you said, yes, there it is. No. Um, not really. Um, and so really where it came down to for me when I was listening to both these guys talk. And these guys talked a lot, specifically about the process with the calf injury, Justin's preparation. And here's kind of the cliff notes. Russell Wilson has that calf injury. He's going to test it pregame. The exam didn't show us. It kind of became, it went from a grade 1 to a grade 2. That did not happen. It's not more severe than it was, but he was feeling comfortable. Now it's tight again. So it's basically back to where it was when he first injured it. Can you believe this entire thing happened while he was pushing a blocking sled in the conditioning test? Yeah, I think you can go back to that and say, what were they thinking? Why does a quarterback need to push a blocking sled, especially a 35-year-old quarterback? I know, everybody conditioning tests, et cetera, but um, there are some things that, your 35-year-old quarterback doesn't need to be doing. I think that's one of them. And so, he hurts his calf. And we'll see. I will say this. So not from the press conference, but from what I saw today, I think Justin Fields is going to start. And the reason is I didn't see Russ do anything really. He kind of stood around. When he threw the ball, it was quick catch turn. Didn't even really go through a 3-step, 5-step drop. Didn't, go through a play action sequence where he would have to go back and fake the handoff and then turn around and throw. We didn't see him pivot like that. Probably won't until Sunday, and we'll kind of see how that all comes about. But we didn't see that. And so I think there's obvious concerns to be raised with how Russ looked. And so didn't really do any team stuff today. Kind of stood and watched. They're probably letting it calm down. I think it's his right calf, so it was a re-aggravation of that calf injury from training camp. I think Fields is probably going to start in this game. And listen, I think it's the right call. I do. I don't think this is a severe calf injury where Russ is going to miss 3-4 weeks. Probably, honestly, if I'm putting bets on it right now, I think he's going to be good next week to play against Denver. I just don't think they want this to turn into a Joe Burrow situation. Joe Burrow last year, when he re-injured his calf, you saw the decline in a guy that relied on his mobility, a guy that relied on pocket movement, stepping up in the pocket, trying to move around. You saw a guy that didn't look like himself, didn't look comfortable. That's what you would see with Russell Wilson. He relies so much on his mobility to create passing lanes for him. He's a short quarterback, so he needs to create clear passing lanes so he can throw over the middle of the field. Your offensive line is going to be limited, and it's a banged up Steelers offensive line, Spencer Anderson, and you're facing guys like Judon and Jarrett. One way to neutralize them is to get the pocket moving, to run things like rollouts, keepers, QB run game, things like that. And that would have been a big part of the Russ game plan if he had been, if he was fully healthy. I'm just not sure you want him executing that. If he's plays, I'm assuming that he will try to execute that, but I just think the re-injury risk is significant where it could become that 3 or 4 week injury. And you don't want that to happen with Russ. You named this guy your starter. So I think you want to be smart there. Justin Fields, has his drawbacks. Certainly, he's a volatile quarterback that can be incredible. He can be fireworks or he can be disastrous. And you kind of have this issue with him where it is that back and forth of, wow, what a player. What are you doing? And that's the career of Justin Fields. And when you're playing ball control, you can't have those turnovers. And that is why Russell Wilson is the starter. He doesn't turn the ball over as much. even though Russell Wilson and Justin Fields both run into sacks, so they're both very similar players. But Russ without his mobility, I mean, it's hard for me to start that guy in the situation you put him into. With Siamalo out, with Anderson as first start against this pass rush, I think it's really hard. If you want to be smart and pragmatic about it and say, okay, we could sit him this game and he can come back against Denver and then be okay the rest of the season, which I think is probably what they're going to be thinking. I just don't think it's pragmatic to play him. Now, if he gets out there Sunday, feels good, can move around, cool. And then you play him. But I think there can be limitations to that, and Russ without his mobility, it would not be a good thing for the Steelers. First of all, two, if he is going to try with his mobility and move around, and it's going to be a significant detriment to his game, if you can, the re-injury risk is that high, you maybe don't want to test it. So I think there's a lot of different angles you can take with this quarterback situation, and so we'll see. I'm expecting it to be Justin Fields right now, to be quite honest with you. I just think it's the pragmatic choice, for the long term of Russell Wilson. And so we'll kind of see. I'm imagining the Steelers might be in the same thought process there. He just did not look like a player that was going to play on Sunday, but I've seen crazy things happen before in the NFL, so I'm not going to rule it out. Other things that I just kind of want to quickly mention: Corey Trice, starting dime back. Be kind of wondering who it would be. Would it be him? Would it be, I don't know, KZ? Would it be Rush? It's going to be Corey Trice. And that's going to be an interesting matchup with him, Drake London, um, Kyle Pitts, 6'4", 6'6", one of the rare guys on the inside that has size to neutralize a guy like that. So could be tested. Really interested to see how that kind of comes about. Your tackles, I expect them to be Broderick Jones at right, Dan Moore at left. Troy Fautano is going to be active, but I don't think he's quite there yet, ready to start from the team's point of view, at least. I mean, I wouldn't hate starting him, but I don't think they're going to do that. And then I do expect Ben Skowronek to come up at wide receiver. Roman Wilson out. So we'll see how all of that goes. Steelers' first regular season game in 2 days. I will be live in Atlanta giving you guys coverage all weekend. Thanks for listening, everybody. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell if you're watching this on YouTube. If you are listening to this on a podcasting platform, make sure to leave a review. Folks, make sure to check out our subtext in the description. You can subscribe to that, get free text all the time, and make sure to subscribe with that one-on-one conversations with me. Great stuff. You can send questions, be featured in here, and more. All right, everybody. As always, thanks for watching. Be back this week.